Let's take a look at the additional options for working with primaries. If you want to work more selectively than just with the overall picture, you have the opportunity of working with highlights, midtones, and shadows individually. These controls work as per clip, so you can make selections here that don't translate into anything else, in particular about the level that you want to work with. So on the tangent panel you can select highlights, midtones, and shadows over F4, F5, and F6, and F1 will bring you back to overall. And again, you can also really just click with your mouse on it to get into the other sections. And now there is this pull down on the tangent panel. You simply click on the gray out button. In the interface you can choose from these 3 presets here, for example color to gray, or depending on your content, white to black might give you better information. Same goes for color to black. In this case, apparently this is not a very good way for distinctive work of isolating these parts of the shadows, so I'll stick with color to gray for this picture. And now here to the right you have a slider that you can use to isolate color. So this is strictly really just luminance levels, and we'll basically now look into more of the midtones, and the further I move up, the more I get into almost already the highlight areas. If I only want to work with lowest levels, I can make this go down as much as I want to, basically up until the point where there is actually no levels there in the original picture. So I'll move back up until I see everything that's in these windows that also seems to have sort of noise still in there, that I only work with this part of the image. On the tangent panel, just hit the gray out button again and you're back with the regular image. In the interface, go with none if you want to see the full picture. And what you can do right away is go back into virtual trackball mode and lower the offset for just the selected part of your shadows. If you want to check how this would affect more of the midtones, this is interactive, so you don't have to stick with the selection you made in gray out mode. I can now move up with my selected area. So as you can see, I'm now toning down midtones as well instead of really just the lower blacks. So you have a nice way of fine-tuning this interactively. The floor here, for example, could use some more black in here, but I don't want to go with all of the midtones. So what I'll do is I'll basically stick with the selection I made to crush blacks in these windows, and then move on to midtones. Of course, you don't have to do this. It's really just an example of how far you can take it already at this stage. So if you've got time, and if this is required by someone who wants to see how far you can take the picture, you can go into the next level and now work with the midtones. There is a selection already made, how this will not affect shadows because we already made a selection here. And then there is another selector here which will isolate this from highlights. So the more I choose, the more of what's in the sky I'll also affect. The lower I go, the more I will basically stick with everything underneath the sky. So I'll go for a smaller corridor, go back into the regular mode. And now let's see if I tone down color here in the midtones again. As you can see, this gives actually a nice add-on in terms of contrast without crushing too much the black. So I'll have much more contrast in this area here without losing detail. Same thing again for highlights. In the highlights I might want to do something different. Let's quickly check that we really get for almost only highlights here. Apparently that's the case, but we can isolate that further up. So this is pretty much only sky. Now if I want to change the overall impression of the sky, for example, change the temperature here in the blue area, that's now fairly simple to achieve. So I can color clouds and the background of the sky pretty much separately already from the rest of the image. Of course, the snow in the foreground will be affected of this as well, so you better be careful with that. But for creating a specific look with this picture, that's already a fairly easy way of achieving it without going into details such as secondary color correction. You can also now look at this picture without the correction we just applied. So whenever you're on a specific tab and you hit 0, it will basically go down to the very base. In this case, we're looking back at the raw picture. So all of the debearing is done, but no matrix and lookup table appliance yet, and of course no color correction we made so far. If you release 0, both either on the numpad of your keyboard or the tangent panel, you'll get everything back. If you want to be more specific, if you only want to see what you did last, this is how you go about it. You hit the colon next to 0 on your numerical keyboard, and that will set to 0 whatever is on that particular panel that you're working with right now. So if I go back to shadows, of course we need to go back to normal mode then, I can see what I'm actually affecting here with shadows only. If you look to the right of the picture, at the beginning, bottom of the building basically, you'll see the difference. Same thing if I go with midtones. Now this has a more severe effect, basically indeed affecting our total impression of contrast in the picture, and so forth. So whatever you do, there is a way of either saying, let's look at this without anything, or let's look at this with everything but the particular change we made last.